In this video, I'm going to focus on psychology instead of math. Math can be used to justify buying certain items to preserve or grow your wealth, but psychology will give you the strength to wait until the math works out in your favor. Once a person has satisfied his or her physiological needs, such as food, water, clothing, sleep, shelter, that person will strive to satisfy higher needs. These higher needs include safety, love, belonging, and esteem. This was an observation made by Abraham Maslow in his paper titled A Theory of Human Motivation. The need to belong and the need for esteem can make people do things that are contrary to what is good for them. We're all guilty of this. Think about it. How difficult is it to do something that nobody else is doing? How difficult is it to drive around in an old, paid-off, junky car when everyone around you is driving in a nice, new, leased car? How difficult is it to pack your lunch when people you sit with always buy from the cafeteria? Do you find yourself apologizing to house guests for not having the top-of-the-shelf beer, wine, or spirits available, when deep down you know that you personally enjoy the cheaper brands just as much? These are just a few examples, but I bet if you think about it, you can come up with many others that you personally experience. Advertisers are fully aware of the need to belong, and they use it to their full advantage to get you to buy stuff. Children are especially susceptible to the need for the approval of others. What about investments? The need for confirmation is especially powerful here. You'll often hear people bragging about their investments when the price has risen, and not talking about them at all when the price has fallen. Why is this? Well, it's because a rising price is a signal that society is agreeing with you. Nobody wants to admit publicly to doing things that others don't think is smart. That's what makes buying the metals so difficult. Only those who have the strength to partially ignore the herd instinct will save and buy them. Of course, maybe that's one of the reasons why you're watching this video. Maybe deep down you're hoping that I'm going to confirm for you that your past metals purchases are smart purchases. Well, you know where I stand on the issue, but I'm not going to confirm it for you here. For that, you'll have to go back and watch one of my other videos where I do math. You can never be right just because others agree with you. You can only be right when your facts are correct, your reasoning is sound, and your math is error-free. Your investments will be profitable when you are right when others are wrong. Of course, you have to have the emotional fortitude to stand your ground in the time period between when you buy and when others finally come to realize that you were right the whole time. Price is a primary signal of crowd opinion. Most people in the Western world will not buy things when the price is low. I believe one of the reasons for this is that a low price on something is a sign that society does not value it. I've noticed that when the price of silver went from between $40 to $50 down to where it is now, that there was a significant decline in the number of videos made about silver investing. Many of the videos that were posted were expressing frustration or even decrying the stupidity of buying the metal in the first place. Very few of the new videos were expressing excitement over the opportunity silver investors now had and have to buy twice as much silver in return for their spare income. The converse is also true, that people tend to get excited over and buy things that are going up in price. A rising price sends a signal that society is approving of something. Let's take Bitcoin for example. Few people knew about it years ago when it was selling for only a few dollars. Now that it is selling for several $100s or even $1,000, it is generating a lot of excitement. Lots of people are buying it now, after the price has gone up. Bitcoin is showing up in the mainstream media now. Those who put out videos in the past about the metals are now focusing their attention on Bitcoin instead. A good example of this is Trace Mayer, who wrote the book titled The Great Credit Contraction. In this book, he called for a stunning increase in the price of gold as the credit market collapsed. Well, he also had a podcast for a number of years titled The Run to Gold Wrap-Up. As the price of gold fell and the price of Bitcoin rose, he changed his podcast title to Bitcoin and Run to Gold Wrap-Up. You can guess what he spent most of his time talking about. As another example, just this morning I noticed that Paul Boyer, the guy who puts out the podcast titled Mad Money Machine, changed his podcast title to Mad Money Machine, The Bitcoin Show. This was after not putting out a single podcast for many, many months. Of course, in the late 2000s, his podcast was all about gold and about economic freedom, a format that had been changed from his early 2000s podcasts, which focused on the efficient market theory and stock investing. I don't know if Bitcoin will continue to increase in price over the coming years. It certainly has over the past year. But since I don't have any math that tells me that it's the right thing to buy, I'll pass. I'm sure I'll hear from others that I'm missing a great opportunity. But I've learned to be comforted when others tell me that I'm wrong. So the signal that seems to trigger an emotional response in investors is a price change. A price change generates a new signal that will give your brain the messages, "You're right," or "You're wrong." Of course, sometimes you have to be willing to be wrong in the short term in order to be right in the long term. This is especially true in the metals market. Once the price starts to rise significantly, it will attract a greater pool of buyers. If this happens, then the flow of metal will dry up. It may even become impossible to obtain physical metal at any price. So how does the small investor combat the psychological effect of rising and falling prices? Well, the easiest way is to ignore the signal that the market gives altogether. Stop looking at the price, or at least stop looking at it until you have enough cash to make a new purchase. This will limit your new signal to maybe once per month. If at that time the price has gone down significantly, do a calculation of how much more metal your cash will buy now than it would have back when the price was higher. This past couple of weeks, I was away on travel, and I did not look at the markets once. I felt very peaceful because I've done the math. There is no other investment, other than the metals, that I feel is comfortable holding in the long term. During my 2 weeks away, I had no price signal available to tell me that I was wrong. All I had was the math that I've done and continue to do. This is the same math I've done since the year 2000. It has been vindicated year after year, even in the face of periodic price declines. I can say for a fact that those periods of large price declines were very psychologically trying, but I was able to get through them. Had I given in to the signals being sent by the crowd, my savings would not be nearly as large as it is now. So my advice to you? Ignore the signals of the market. Do your own analysis, and every once in a while, refresh that analysis based upon new facts as they come available to you. The most important thing is to have the courage to be right when everyone else is telling you that you're wrong.